Hello, everyone, and welcome to Kentucky Go Digital Live. My name is Elaine Abanatha, and I will be leading the show for you today. I am so excited to be joined by the awesome Kentucky Go Digital Live team. We have Courtney DeRosset. She is the KETS Region 8 field staff. We have Amy Buss, who is a technology resource teacher for Warren County Schools. And we have Allison Langley. She is a teacher and special education facilitator for Hardin County Schools. Kathleen Receiver, she's a digital innovation leader for JCPS. And Letitia Sparks, she's the program and partnership at KEDC. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm glad you're here. We also have as our Kentucky Go Digital leader, Donnie Piercey. He is working in a role as a fifth grade teacher and for Fayette County Schools in Kentucky. He is always trying to find new and innovative ways to incorporate technology across the curriculum in order to increase student learning and engagement. You can always check and see what his students are up to by visiting his classroom website, which is www.mrpiercy.com. And Donnie has 13 and a half years of teaching. He also received a Bachelor's of Arts in Theology from Asbury University and got his Master's in Education from Auburn University, Montgomery. Donnie is also a Google for Education Certified Innovator, a Google for Education Certified Trainer, and the Kentucky Liaison to North Bay CUE, and a Google Geo EDU Teacher Advisory Board member. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to Donnie Piercey, and he is going to talk to us today on creating your own Google expeditions.
All right. So first off, guys, thank you so much for having me on. So a few things kind of before we get started. I know we've got it looks about 7 or 8 of us on. So just as I'm kind of walking through, like if you all have any questions, feel free to just kind of unmute your mics, I guess, and let me know. Let's go ahead and get started. So about 4 years ago, Google realized, or they released something called Google Cardboard. And when it first came out, it was something which kind of revolutionized the educational technology industry. The idea behind it, again, for those of you who haven't seen it, I'm guessing a lot of you remember those Viewmasters when we were a kid. You know, those things where you could kind of look in it, have that little spinny disc inside of it, and you could look in it, and it had what was called stereoscopic vision. And the idea behind it was you could look and you might be transported to the bottom of the Grand Canyon. You might be, somewhere on the moon. But, Google looked at this and realized, well, that's fun, but those images are static, that they don't move. And so a Googler, as part of his 20% time project, said, well, what if instead of putting that little spinny disc in there that had those static images, what if we use somebody's phone? And instead of just being where the images stayed still, what if they instead were a virtual, fully immersive experience? Similar to, the idea behind it was using your phone, you could be transported into virtual reality. And rather than spend thousands of dollars on these devices made out of like metal or hard plastic, Google realized, well, why don't we just make them out of cardboard, put some lenses on it that they called biconvex lenses, and then let people use their phones as virtual reality experiences. And this is not a workshop on viewing virtual reality and what is it, but I just feel like before we jump into Google Expeditions and what it is and how you can make your own, I feel like you kind of need the background on what Google Cardboard is. Now, moving on from there. After about a year or two went by and Google Cardboard really started to take off, teachers started to want to use it in the classroom. Makes sense. I mean, especially if you're a history teacher like me, you're like, oh my gosh, rather than just have students look in a textbook or on a web page at static images of like Gettysburg or the Independence Hall in Philadelphia, what if you had a whole class set of these and students could maybe use their own phones to kind of look around and see some of these sites up close? Well, Google quickly realized that, well, there'd be some issues in play. Well, for one, how are you going to get 30 students or trust 30 students in your classroom to put their phones in these viewers, all load up the exact same image, a virtual reality image at the same time, and, guide them as they did like a virtual field trip. So about 3 years ago now, Google released what they called Google Expeditions. And the idea behind it, and I've got a quick little video here. I'm not going to let any sound play, so I'm just going to as this plays, I'm just going to kind of talk through it. The idea behind the Google Expeditions app is the teacher on their tablet, an iPad or an Android tablet, would have an image that would load up. You would press play, and then all your students' devices, whether they be iPads or if they're using their own phones, could then get that image transported to them at the exact same time. And so you as a teacher, you really turn into somebody that's basically running a virtual field trip. In this case, you're outside of the Galapagos Islands. And so it was an awesome tool when it came out, because you as a teacher could lead your students anywhere. And rather than have them just see these images on their own, you could actually be more of a guide, and you could walk them through what some of these images look like. Well, again, this was all fun, and this was good, but teachers started to realize, like, hey, this is cool. My kids are loving Google Expeditions, but I'd love for them, instead of just looking at stuff, to consume some of these images. I'd love for them to be able to actually create their own. And that's, to me, where that was the one big hangup that a lot of teachers had with Google Expeditions when it first launched. They were like, hey, this is great, but I don't just want my students looking at stuff. I want them to be able to tell stories and then lead their classes on, lead their fellow classmates on these virtual field trips, to let them be the storyteller and let their classmates kind of see firsthand what these experiences are like. So anyway, for 3 years, that was the number one piece of feedback that the Google Expedition team had. When can we make our own? When can we make our own? And about a month ago, now they've added the ability where you can actually finally create your own Google Expeditions, and you as a teacher can lead your students on it. Or even better, you can actually have your students create virtual tours where they can then get up in front of the classroom and lead their students or their fellow classmates on these virtual tours. So if you all have any questions later, I created about 10 YouTube video tutorials yesterday. So if you're like, man, could you slow down, or could you go back and look at this again? Feel free to go to this page, and there's instructional videos and stuff on there that you all can look at. So I'm going to go ahead and screen share again, and I'm going to show you all kind of the step-by-step instructions needed for how to create your own Google Expeditions. All right, so first things first, you have to get to my resources page, just to kind of show you where this is. If you go to this link, resources.mrpiercey.com, watch the spelling in my last name. It has a hidden E in it right there, but resources.mrpiercey.com. And then once you get there, you want to mouse up to the top where it says Geo, and then scroll down to where you see it says Tour Creator. So one more time, resources.mrpiercey.com, go to where it says Geo, and then click right here where it says Tour Creator. And that'll open up this link for you all. And these are those step-by-step instructions, the videos. I mean, you can make these virtual tours that you put together as complex as you want. And so I put all the instructions on here for how to do this, but this is really something that you could do with your class, or you could build for your class in about 10 minutes. So let's go ahead and just as kind of a way to run this webinar, let's go ahead and let's actually build one of these tours just as an example. So that way, one, you can see how it's done through here, and then I can show you how you can bring this all into the Google Expeditions app at the end. All right. So first thing you got to do, you'll see that there's a link here that says explore it at vr.google.com/tour creator. If you wouldn't mind clicking that. Now, this is a free Google app that came out. And when you get to this link, you want to click the big button that says, get started. Now, when you load that up, what you'll start to see on here, this is kind of the place where all of your virtual tours will live. And so this is on, this one has 1, 2, 3 that I've kind of built myself, that I've kind of shared up. I've got a classroom one on here. I've got one for my Antarctica expedition that I did that I can share at the end. And then this is the one that we'll kind of take a look at here in a second. But for this walkthrough, I'm just going to go ahead up here and click the button that says New Tour. Although you'll notice there is a button that says Templates. So if your students get a little more advanced, or if you teach younger kids and you want to have them some stuff set up in advance, you can actually use templates. But honestly, the tool itself is really easy to use. So I usually just press the New Tour button. All right. So the next thing you have to think about is, what story do you want to tell? As a history teacher, a lot of times it's easy to kind of put together a virtual tour, because you can just maybe pick an event that happened and then you can retell that event through virtual tours. Well, maybe you're a language arts teacher and you teach high school language arts. Your kids are reading Shakespeare, maybe they're reading Othello or Romeo and Juliet. And rather than go ahead and have them just read these words on the page, well, a virtual tour that you could put together, maybe you could do a tour of in fair Verona. I don't know if you teach high school language arts. Maybe you're doing a read aloud with your class that takes place in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. One of my favorite read aloud that I read to my 5th graders every year, it's called Joey Pigza Swallows the Key. It takes place just outside of Pittsburgh. So you could maybe put a tour together just for Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, to kind of show students where the event in that story takes place. For the sake of this one, though, I live in Lexington, so I'm just going to call my tour Lexington, Kentucky. You don't have to give it a description, although that will help if you kind of want to share it. And if you ever want to publish a tour, you always have to select a cover photo, something that can go on it that will make yours stand out. I'm just going to jump in here. Actually, I'm just going to grab one of these for my cover photos. Might tell me the dimensions are off a little bit. This might look a little bit skewed, but I'm just going to go ahead and add that to my cover photo. Final thing, you want to give it something that'll sort out. For this, we'll just do, we'll do travel and leisure for the category. All right, going to go ahead and create it now. This is actually, honestly, the simplest part. You need to start adding scenes. Now, the default scene that pops up is the Googleplex out in Mountain View, California. And there's 2 ways that you can add 360 images, these street view images, to your tour. First way is you can actually search for a location here. So maybe you want to search for, someplace in Lexington, maybe like maybe Ashland, the Henry Clay estate. So you search. It gives you search results, and I'm just going to click the first one. Then what appears here is a suggested street view image, right? So this is a 360 image that was added to Google Maps. Although you'll see over here where this little orange man, my friend Pegman, is, if I click him and kind of hold down with my mouse, I can start to drag him around. And any of those dots on there, those are user added photos. Anything that's kind of like a straight line, that's usually something that the Google Maps car had added. So I can actually preview these. So I can mouse over it, see if I can find one that I like. If I mouse over these as I'm holding it down, you'll see the image change. Go ahead and drop him there, right? And then once I have the scene kind of at the side here, but that's all right, I can press Add Scene. Now, once you add the scene to your tour, you always want to give it a title. So I'm just going to call this Ashland, Kentucky. The description right here, these are where it says description here on the right. This is once you publish your tour and once you put it in Google Expeditions, this is what'll pop up as kind of text. So if somebody's looking at your published tour, this is kind of like the paragraph that goes along with it. And they give you 500 characters to type with. So, you're not going to be putting a whole novel on here, but just if you want to give more detail about it, or if you want to do what I do a lot, just go to Wikipedia, copy the paragraph in, and then just make sure you link to the Wikipedia page there. All right, so I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to add another scene here. So you'll see down here in the bottom, there's a little button that says Add Scene. So if you click that, Now it'll open up this little adding button again. And so let's just search for another place. Maybe we want to search maybe Rupp Arena. So I'll do a search for Rupp. And again, the first image that pops up is, just kind of like a suggested one. Looks like this is one right inside of the gate. Well, maybe the picture that I want, if I click on Pegman here and kind of drag him around, you'll see that there's a whole bunch of different dots that pop up. I could try to find one maybe that's inside the arena. That looks pretty good. I'll go ahead and drop him there, turn him around, get a good view of that there. Check if there's nothing inappropriate, or if it's a full image, or if there's somebody's feet in the bottom of it. Looks like this one was taken with a tripod. I'm just going to go ahead and press Add Scene, and then we'll call this scene Rupp Arena. Now, here's the thing. I need to go ahead because I can start to add dozens of these scenes to my published tour. But before I publish it and make it where anyone with the link can view this, I want to add a few things to it. For example, one of the things that I want to add is what's called a point of interest, or sometimes what we call it a POI. So for example, let's say that I want it up here where it says Rupp Arena. I'm just going to go press Add a Point of Interest. I want to add the scoreboard. And when I click Add a Point of Interest there on the right, it puts this little target on there. And this target, I can actually click it and drag it around. So, maybe if I want to bring this down towards the floor, I can call this, I'll just call this the basketball court. And I can describe it. This is where UK wins a lot of games. They're pretty good, right? Now, let's say that I wanted to add something more to this point of interest. I didn't just want it, once I publish this, for that piece of text to pop up. Maybe I want to add an image overlay. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to go to Google Images. I'm going to go to Google Images. I'm just going to search for UK basketball. And I'm going to go to filter here. And we're going to filter, make sure that they're labeled for reuse, right? Go ahead and maybe find a photo that I could add, right? So again, I'll just maybe click on this one right there. Now, I'm going to go ahead and save this image, this Flickr image that kind of a user uploaded. It was listed as public. And download that to there. It's now saved to my desktop. I'm going to go into Tour Creator, and I'm going to click on this point of interest. Now, over here on the right, I can actually add a few things to this. One, I can actually add an image overlay. So I'm going to click that button, which of course, I'm going to refresh this page here. It's glitching, I think, because I've got the hangup going kind of behind the scenes here. All right, I'm going to go back to Rupp Arena there. I'm going to click on basketball court. I'm going to click on Add Image Overlay, select an image. I'm just going to go and kind of find that image that I just downloaded. Where did it go? There it is. I'm going to press OK and press Add. And then what that'll do is it'll put that image onto the floor. Now, I could do a few things with this. One, I could actually click and drag it around. If I was trying to, make an overlay where it fit directly on top of the scene, where maybe it showed like a past event, maybe you had like a historical image that showed what something was like a long time ago, or maybe I took a photo myself that I wanted to upload onto this image. I can go ahead and put this image directly on there. So when somebody clicks on that POI, that's what pops up, right? Now, you can actually add a few more things to this too. If you have an audio recording program, you can actually add scene narration. In other words, when your expedition loads up, once you get it published to Google Expeditions, instead of just seeing text, they could actually hear your voice talking over the top of it. They could also have some ambient background noise where, maybe your 360 image was recorded in a park somewhere, and you had an image or a sound effect constantly playing in the background of fountains or birds chirping or kids playing kind of behind the scene, just to kind of make your story be a little bit more realistic. Now, I could keep adding scenes to this all day, and I could press add scene. I could just search for Lexington, Kentucky. We could just go to Lexington, see what the first image that pops up is. This is always a random one. Maybe click, drag it somewhere downtown, and add scene. And the more scenes that I add to this, kind of the more realistic your 360 photos, or sorry, your tour is going to be at the end. But one thing that you always want to be sure of is when you're adding these 360 images to your tours, you'll notice here in the bottom left, there's this little button on a 360 image that says Set Starting View. And that's actually really important when you're trying to tell a story. I'm going to jump back over here to my one of Henry Clay's estate at Ashland. When I have this image, when I have this 360 image opened up, I don't want the first thing that they see to be of the ground or looking straight up at the sky. Maybe I want them to actually notice the side of the building here. Or maybe I'm telling a story where, it's talking about some of the Civil War events that happened at Ashland, and I want them to see this path or a marker that's leading up to it. So you can actually press Set Starting View, and then you can rotate it around. It only stays right at the horizon. And then once you have the perspective that you want, you can press Save. And then when your 360 image loads up in your published tour, that's the first picture that they'll see before they have the chance to look around. All right. Ladies, do I have any questions or anything so far? Or do you all have any questions?
Questions. We have a question from Chris Lacey wanting to know if you can recommend any vendors or how to go about getting this gear for a classroom set. And they're wanting something specifically that is teacher controlled. Okay.
Yeah. So as far as like getting gear to like create a Google Expeditions kit, there's a few options that schools can do. I mean, one, if you have in your budget, like Best Buy does sell Google Expeditions kits. To be perfectly honest, like they're pretty pricey. I mean, granted, the nice part about buying the kits through Best Buy is, it comes with everything. So typically you'll get like 30 devices. They'll have the nice case where if you're like a technology resource teacher, you can literally just wheel it into a building, walk into a classroom, hand out the devices with the viewers already on them, and you're good to go. But again, I know that that's not in most schools' budgets. An option that I've seen a lot of schools do before is they'll just go on to a preferred vendor list. Like if your district allows for like Amazon or something, and you can typically find some pretty refurbished phones. Or if you do like, I've sent this email out before, send a blanket email to parents in a school. Or a letter home saying, hey, we're trying to put together a virtual reality kit for our building. If you have a used phone in a drawer or just a tablet that might be a couple of years old that you're really just not using anymore and you'd like to contribute, have them clear all their data and stuff from it, and they can donate it to the school, and then you can kind of piece together a kit that way. There's the pricey route, which, you can do the preferred vendor list like through Best Buy or some things like that. But, at the end of the day, especially if you're teaching middle school or high school, if your school has or your district has like a bring your own device policy, Google Expeditions, and we'll kind of dive into that part of it here in a second. When the way that it works is students are not connected to the Wi-Fi. They're typically just connected to a router. And that router is not connected to a larger internet. It's just making a network that all the kids can join. But again, we can dive into that in a second.
I had a question, Donnie. Okay. So is there a size limit to a tour? Can you get a tour too big? Is there a size limit to that? And how many tours do I have free storage for?
Oh, they don't really fill up any storage. So, there's none of that. I've created a tour with about 25 scenes, and I haven't hit any limit on that yet. So again, unless you're like, retelling your entire life story and every vacation you've ever been on, I don't think that you'll, run out of tours or space that way. And honestly, if you're running into too many, just make a tour that's a part 2. Yep.
Okay, I did have one more question, and tell me if you're going to get this later. Can I make my own 360 with the Street View app and then upload it to, and I assume since there were other public ones.
So tell you what, let's kind of jump into that next. I think that's a good question. So, you know, I just told you how to create tours using Street View imagery that's already available. And that's kind of the nice part. Google, for the most part, has Street View imagery on all 7 continents, most major cities, most locations. But, you know, if you want to, say, put together a virtual tour of your classroom, maybe for back to school night at the first day of school, and you want to show parents what's in there using points of interest, you know, I'm guessing the Maps car has never been inside your room before. So, you know, how would you go about doing that? So I'm going to go ahead and try something risky here. I'm going to try sharing my cell phone screen, which, you know, I've muted all notifications on it. So we'll see what happens here. Close this out and go ahead. Give me about 30 seconds here. Hopefully, again, if this crashes my computer, I will not do this, but we'll see. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and screen share. Eventually, I'll screen share there. And can you all see, oops, sorry, okay, full screen mode. Can you all see my cell phone?
Yes, sir.
Okay, y'all doing that thing like you're judging me on my apps that I have, but that's okay. But anyway, all right, so let's kind of talk about like 360 view creation. You know, there are 360 cameras that you can purchase, and, you know, we can talk about those in a second. The app that most people use for creation is this app called Street View by Google, right? And it's available on both iPhone and Android. In a nutshell, it's the collection of every 360 image that has ever been added to Google Earth or to Google Maps. So those things that pop up where it's like, oh my gosh, how did somebody get a photo, you know, inside their house? Or why is there a 360 photo, you know, I don't know, of some guy's foot? Like, where did those ones come from? It came through the Google Street View app, right? Now, Google does have a filter set up that will stop people from just like posting things that are inappropriate. But the way that this app works, you can actually search for anywhere on there, which is what most people use it for. But in the bottom right-hand corner, there's a little camera button that you can press. And then you can press the button that says camera. Now, when you do that, and again, I'm inside the conference room here, and there's no student names up, so this is always kind of fun. But the way that it works is now you can start to spin around in a circle. And it's going to take a picture of my computer screen. You can see what a mess it is. But you can start to spin around in a circle, and kind of like those panoramas that you used to take, except you can actually go up. Oops, sorry. You just got to line up the dots here. And again, I'm not doing the best job because I'm kind of sitting down and literally spinning in a wheelie chair. But you can actually do this to collect some 360 photos. And once you're done, you can press that check mark. And you can spin all the way around if you want. But once you do that, little peg man will come in here. He's that orange dude. And he'll actually stitch all of those pictures that you took into one image. Now, the thing to know is, if you use Google Photos, which, do you guys use Google Photos? If you don't, please use Google Photos. That 360 picture that you took will be automatically or automagically backed up to Google Photos, right? So I've got a collection of some here. Some of these I took with my 360 camera. So like that's why I'm holding one in this one. But if you've got a 360 camera, or if you just take a photo with the Street View app, they all get backed up to Google Photos regardless, right? So what you can do, right, if you wanted to add your own images to a tour that aren't on Google Maps, you can actually click a 360 image that's loaded up in Google Photos. Go over here, click the 3 dots that say More Options, press the download button, and then that'll download that image to your desktop. And then when you go back to Tour Creator, you can press Add Scene. Then there's that upload button right there, and you can press Select a 360 image. And then that 360 image that I just downloaded is right there. And I guess we're going to pretend like Antarctica is part of Lexington right now. But you press Add Scene. And then that 360 photo that you took, it was saved on your phone. It got backed up. And then you just download it and upload it into Tour Creator. And then boom. Now that one that students took either on their own devices or with a 360 camera, you can now edit and add points of interest to. Does that make sense, Elaine?
Absolutely. And I just get excited because now I'm thinking all of those reports, and we had said something on the chat earlier about how our minds were going a mile a minute about what we could do with this tool. And we're so thankful that you're sharing this with us. So absolutely, that makes sense. And it seems easy. That was another thing that we said on the chat. You're making it so much easier. And we think that our students can do this. So it's doable. It's not over our head.
So this app launched in May. It actually launched the last week of school last year. And, the last week of school, you're always like, oh, crap, I need stuff to do, And so I spent 5 minutes. I showed my 5th graders last year how the app works, how to add imagery to it, how to add, they didn't have points of interest when it first launched. All you could add were just like text and stuff. But within 5 minutes, they were retelling their favorite read-alouds from the year through Tour Creator, right? But okay, so tell you what, let's hop into, we have like 10, 15 minutes left. Is that okay? All right. So what I'm going to do here at the end is, you've seen how to make a tour, how to add those points of interest. Let's talk about how we can get those tours published that you can share with your class. But also how, if you have a Google Expeditions kit, how students can literally get up in front of their classmates, have their classmates put on the VR goggles. This is the international symbol for put on VR goggles, I guess, and go on their tours. Okay, we've got our lame tour of Lexington here. I'm going to go ahead and delete this Antarctica scene. You can just press the delete scene button that's down there, delete it. When you publish a tour, right, it publishes to a service called Poly. That's just the service that Google uses to create their expeditions. So I'm going to press publish. And if your students are publishing tours, I'd recommend that they publish them as unlisted, kind of like an unlisted YouTube video. But you can go ahead and make it public. I don't know why I'm making this public, but why not? Then I'm going to press publish. Now, when you do that, that's going to give you a link eventually that you can copy that link to your clipboard. And then when you open up that link in a new tab, it'll appear like this, right? Where you see my opening scene started off. There's the look around. I can kind of look around all these different spots. I can, let's go to my next scene here, go to RUP. Now, this is not obviously Google Expeditions just yet, but if I click here in the bottom left where it says scene information, and if I click on where it says basketball court, you'll see my photo overlay, my image overlay popped up, and then that text that I typed in actually appears down there. And had I recorded like a scene narration, like sound going over the top of it, when I clicked on this, then my voice would have started talking. So, you would have heard me say, this is where UK wins a lot of games. They're pretty good. I don't know. But anyway, so you can go through that. Now, here's the thing. Just because it's published on here does not mean that I, as a teacher leading a Google Expedition, a virtual reality tour, I can't necessarily do it just yet. So here's what you got to do. You jump down here to where it says share. Right? Now, you can share this to Facebook if you want. Fun fact, if you press the share to Twitter button, it actually appears in a tweet that people can click through the different images. I thought that was cool. You can embed those. You can grab the embed code. On my resources page, I've added another tour of Lexington on there if you wanted to see what an embedded one looks like. But the fun part is when I press publish to expeditions, it tells me this tour will become available in your expeditions library. And I'm going to press got it. Now check this out. I'm going to open up my phone again, and I'm going to open up my Google Expeditions app. Now, a few things you need to know just right from the start if you've never seen the Expeditions app before, that it can be used. One, down at the bottom, and again, this might be covered up by the Google Hangouts is sharing your screen. I don't know if you guys can see that or not. You can just search for different things. So maybe you're searching for like a landscapes tour, right? You can filter by that. Maybe you want to search for, maybe you're teaching ancient Greece, Rome rather, and you just want to search for like Rome. I don't know. You can search for things, and these expeditions are a collection. Think of them as like tours. They're a collection of between 3 and 20 360 images that people have put together with text boxes and image overlays, right? Now, I need to get to the one that I just made though. So I'm going to jump down here, press the button that says library. It's down there at the bottom. And then where it says downloads, these are the ones that I've downloaded to my particular phone. But I'm going to click where it says My Tours, right? And when I do that, any tour that I've added to my Google Expedition will appear underneath here. So that one that I just made called Lexington, Kentucky. Now I made one yesterday that's called it. That's the one that says my hometown. But this is the one that's called Lexington, Kentucky. I'm going to click that. And then in order to use this with my class, I have to press download to viewer to guide. And when I press that, I'm in offline mode right now. Sorry. But when I press that, I'm just going to go ahead and use the one that I made yesterday. Sorry, I'm trying to do it from my phone. I'll go ahead and load this one up. So this is the one I made yesterday. And again, I had a feeling it might give me a little error there because my phone's in offline mode. But I'm going to press guide. And now, if my students had their own devices, or if there was the Expeditions kit in the classroom, the students could just connect to the Wi-Fi network that my device was on, open up the Google Expeditions app, and then press follow. That number that popped up, that's kind of like the way of that's their way of making sure they're joining the correct expedition. They do it through number. As long as somebody as long as they follow that number, I can then lead them on a virtual tour. And again, this is the one that I made yesterday, right? But I can go ahead, I can walk through all of the different 360 images that I put together. So I did one yesterday of like the Kentucky Theater. I can pull it up here, and I can even add some text with like some image overlays talking of, I found on the Kentucky Theater website, I found like the newspaper clipping that was talking about the day that it opened to kind of help bring this image to life a little more. And, you can't talk about the Kentucky Theater without like the marquee lit up at nighttime. So I found an image that was listed as free to use, found it, tried to overlay it on it. It didn't exactly fit, but just to give students that idea of, this is what it looked like at another time. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, I have another question.
Okay.
So and I was surprised to now see what you've just built, and it looks identical to a general expedition. So that we have, used. So a lot of those questions and answers. So that would just be in that description too. Am I correct? Like general expeditions, there were several embedded questions for beginner, intermediate, and advanced. Yeah. So those would just be embedded in that description up to 500 characters, I think.
Yeah, and that would just be a question that, if a student were putting it together, you could do it that way. And again, even if you don't have an expeditions kit, this is how I use it with my students. I'll just pull up an example here. I could very easily, I could jump into any tours that I've put together. Say that I wanted to share with them like my tour that I put together about my Antarctic expedition. Go ahead and just publish this. All it does is it comes to you on a separate link. And so if you use Google Classroom, you could put a tour together for your students. And again, this is my personal Gmail. This isn't my school one, so I can open it. These are my pretend ones. My wife's in my pretend class, so I'm just going to go ahead and add this on here. If I wanted to start to put an assignment together, or if I wanted to say maybe make an announcement, if I wanted to create an assignment, even if I was putting a field trip together and I wanted students to see what that field trip was going to look like. Maybe you're going to the Kentucky Theater, maybe you're going to the theater downstream. You could create an assignment, call it Antarctic questions, and then onto that Google Classroom assignment, just add a link to your tour and then give students some instructions. Maybe you attach onto it a Google Doc that has some questions that you'd like them to answer about it. Or maybe you just want to show them some things that you're going to be doing this year, field trips that you're going to be taking. It's very easy once you have your tour published to get that tour in your students' hands.
Donnie, I have a question.
Yes.
For your students, when they are actually creating the tours, can you just briefly walk us through instructionally what you have them do? Do you have them storyboard their tour? Do you have them write the script prior to?
It kind of depends, to be perfectly honest. For when we did our personal narratives, for example, that was one of the first writing pieces that we did this year. I had a digital graphic organizer that I had them fill out to kind of plan, first off, choose a proper story, but then they had to go and figure out, okay, what was the different settings? Where did my story take place? What happened there? And they typed that on a Google Doc. Once their story was finished, I then had them go and find as close as they could get to where the events in their personal narrative took place. And then they just copied and pasted paragraphs into, that they already typed on that doc onto their tour. So that way it's like, hey, here's what I did, here's what I saw. And then someone could go through and kind of click to get a more immersive story.
We do have a question too, Donnie, in the chat about editing. Can you edit after you are already working in a tour? Is there an edit option?
Oh yeah. Once you publish a tour, if you add another, just going to jump over here. I'm just going to press add scene. Let's say if you add another 360 image to your tour, it's kind of like a Google site in that it won't update until you press that publish button. But if I were to go back and delete it afterwards, the most recent version is that someone's going to see is whatever happens after I press that publish button. So the link will change, like the live link to the tour. That'll only change when somebody presses the publish button. So you can edit anything.
Hey, Donnie, I have a question for you.
Uh-huh.
So could, say, like Elaine and I collaborate together on one?
Not yet. Wink, wink. Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah. That is from what I've been told. That's a feature request that a lot of people have been kind of putting in for, because Google's their whole ecosystem, it's based around collaboration. So right now you kind of have to do the old school, like if students are building one together, kind of sharing the same Chromebook. Going to be honest, I tried to do a workaround with that, where we had them, they were collaborating on a Google Doc to generate the story. And then they had one student that would go in and kind of copy and paste the text to the different points of interest and stuff. Or one student could be on Google Maps searching up the Street View images that they wanted. And then the other student could go and find those in Tour Creator. So, it's not exactly on the same tour yet, but it's a lot. You kind of have to hack it a little bit, but it's a feature request that's been coming. So
2 points.
Okay.
One, you have definitely tugged on this social studies heart of mine, but any teacher can use this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the exact thing that we talk about, that technology is a tool to make content more apparent and more real for kids. Yeah. And then the last thing, back when you were talking about building it and you showed like how to find images that are public, and to have that conversation with your kids and actually build in the digital literacy skills and the skill set, that conversation happens when you use the technology authentically. And this is exactly what you did. I mean, we're all on the chat and got our own little private mind-blowing emojis over here, but I don't have a question. I just wanted to point out that this covers what
Well,
this is how we use technology to make, the content come to life for kids.
Yeah, I mean,
absolutely, Courtney. And I just want to chime in. Our school is very fortunate that we have a couple kids that we're able to access. I have gone into FCS class and done the human reproductive system. I've gone into our gym class. There's a really cool major league created an expedition that does like statistics in baseball. And so, I mean, there are endless possibilities in all content areas. These have been used in my school by literally every content area. There are so many things out there. And I love now that I feel more confident with creating my own too. I think that's awesome. So thank you, Donnie, so much for sharing all of your wonderful resources.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's the most authentic ways that you can have kids tell stories, because these are not locations that are made up. These are locations that are actually on the planet. And if you tie it into like a larger story, either it's a story that happened to that individual student, or if it's a story that maybe they read a nonfiction book and they want to retell, like Number of the Stars or something, because they can have that authentic experience when putting it together, it's a very powerful tool.
Well, Donnie, I wanted to thank you on behalf of all of our viewers and of us, because you've inspired us, and also, like Courtney said, that you've given us a knowledge of a tool that is amazing for our students to create, which is one of the things that we believe here for Kentucky Go Digital. Allison, can you share how everyone can get connected and support and stay connected to Kentucky Go Digital?
Absolutely. So as always, please make sure that you're following the hashtag KYGoDigital. We have our Facebook page, we have our Twitter page, and exciting news, I believe we have all of our regional events for the summer are officially booked. So be watching Twitterverse for exciting announcements about all of those. So make sure that you continue to create, connect, and share with us.
Yes, thank you. And Donnie wanted us all to remind everyone that all these resources will be found inside the description of this show, but also resources.mrpiercey.com for your use and general knowledge and the power of pause too. So thank you everyone for joining us. And then again, thank you, Donnie, for this amazing tool. We appreciate it. Bye, guys. Get involved with Kentucky Go Digital. Attend regional events, like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel, or follow us on Twitter.